Well, what we intended to do in this particular debate was to look also at how investor sentiment is being hurt. Is this a case of overreach by the CBI? But there are serious questions if one looks at the FIR, of which we now have a copy, on just who the finger is being pointed at this stage. Joining us to debate all of these points, Randeep Singh Surjewala, Cabinet Minister in the Haryana government, spokesperson of the Congress Party, Captain Abhimanyu with me in the studio, spokesperson of the BJP, Jai Panda, Lok Sabha MP of the BJD, the former CBI Director, Mr. R.K. Raghavan, also with us, and Meera Sanyal, Country Executive and Chairperson of the Royal Bank of Scotland. Thank you all very much for being with us. Randeep, one of the points that this FIR says, and it refers on two occasions to the use of the terms competent authority. In the first instance, it says this competent authority rejected Hindalco's bid to get control of this coal block. Later on it says that this competent authority said okay fine, and the Hindalco process was thereby started. The big question, and it says in the first instance, along with certain proposals for amendment of guidelines, they were placed before the competent authority who approved the proposed changes. It says who approved the proposed changes. Who is this competent authority?
So, this is a Supreme Court monitored investigation. An FIR has been registered, and appropriate truth and facts will be placed in public domain sooner than later, I am certain. Number two, I also want to say, I heard Mr. Parekh on your channel as also on other channels yesterday. Specific assertions and questions were put to him, whether the Prime Minister, as you are trying to hint, influenced him in any manner in allocating a coal block in favor of Hindalco, and the answer that he categorically gave was no. He was also asked whether anybody in Prime Minister's office, and Mr. Nair and Mr. Chatterjee was named by the correspondent, or any other official influenced him or suggested that Hindalco should be given this block, and the answer that he gave was no. He was also asked whether or not the Prime Minister in any way influenced his recommendation of letting the coal block be shared.
Randeep, these are two separate issues. Randeep, these are two issues, because I asked that question and you were on the program yesterday. And so let me tell you what I asked him. No, I'm not hinting. This is the CBI which is pointing fingers, Randeep. You're raising a separate point, and the point that you're raising, and this is the question I asked Parekh last night. I asked the former coal secretary, is there anything to suggest that the decision taken by the Prime Minister was wrong? Is there anything to suggest that the decision that he had taken was wrong? And he says, no, the decision was not wrong. But in the FIR today, this story has moved on because there are new details. It refers to a competent authority signing off on the decisions taken by the coal secretary, and it also refers to Kumar Mangalam Birla. So Parekh's original point remains valid. Why has Birla been named? Why has he been named? Why is this competent authority not named?
So this is for the Central Bureau of Investigation to answer. I am sorry, I do not represent the CBI here.
I agree with you.
I represent the Indian National Congress here. And it's a question that you should put to CBI.
Absolutely.
As to why have they registered the FIR?
Why
have they looked at the facts?
Absolutely.
Have they gone into the facts?
You hit the nail on the head. Why hasn't the CBI named the competent authority? That's the question, Randeep. It's the absolute, it's the perfect question. It summarizes this entire story. Why has, there are names in this FIR.
It's a Supreme Court.
There are names over here.
This is a Supreme Court monitored investigation.
It names Mr. Parekh, it names one of the foremost industrialists.
Please have the patience to listen.
I'll come back to you. I'm sorry I'm interrupting
Absolutely.
you. I know, just give me 1 second and then I will come back to you. It doesn't name the Prime Minister.
Okay.
Why doesn't it name the Prime Minister? Go ahead. Randeep.
Your question is to me. It doesn't name the Prime Minister because Central Bureau of Investigation feels that way in this particular case. It's a Supreme Court monitored investigation. Yes. Government is not interfering in the process at all. I'm sure if Mr. Birla has nothing to do with it, which prima facie it appears to be to me as a layman, or Mr. Parekh has no role to play as Mr. Parekh suggests and he has acted bona fide, the truth will come out. Why are we jumping the gun? Why are we prejudging the case? And why are some political parties trying to muddy political atmosphere in this country?
You're muddying the political atmosphere, Captain Abhimanyu.
I'm sorry. On one hand, Mr. Randeep Surjewala accepts that yes, there is a possible anomaly in the FIR filed by the CBI. Prime Minister should have been there in the FIR because he was the cabinet minister, and under his signature the coal block was allotted, and which is actually the whole point of
absolutely incorrect
issue here. Secondly, Mr. Randeep Surjewala constantly maintains that BJP is trying to muddy the political waters. It is the UPA, it is the Congress party which has actually vitiated the entire environment, the business climate in this country by the crony capitalism which this country has seen in last 9.5 years. And on the top of all this massive corruption that they've indulged in, they indulged in a mammoth cover-up operation which will go down in the history of India, that how the corruption was actually tried, the attempt of cover-up was made. I'm sorry, Mr.
So are you saying that the CBI is covering up?
CBI is covering up, and this is very much out in the open now. What are the reasons?
CBI continues to cover up.
I don't understand the provisions and the procedures by which the CBI could differentiate between a coal secretary and the coal cabinet minister under whose signature the coal block was allotted.
Let me put that question to R.K. Raghavan, former CBI director. Sir, it's got two names here. There's a third name missing over here. Does this seem that somebody is trying to protect the Prime Minister? In this case, the CBI, this is a CBI FIR.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to this evening's discussion. Yes, you're right. There are only two names I mentioned, and the FIR doesn't refer to the Prime Minister. You must remember that this is an FIR drawn up after a preliminary inquiry. So to fault the CBI for filing an FIR is absolutely wrong. You must remember, under a preliminary inquiry which the CBI did, it does not have the authority to conduct searches or summon witnesses. And if a witness is summoned during a preliminary inquiry, you could jolly well say that he was not required to be present at the preliminary inquiry. Now the CBI has armed itself with powers of search, summoning witnesses and arrest. So naturally they have gone through a very logical process. Now your question about the Prime Minister not being mentioned, this is a situation immediately after the preliminary inquiry and an FIR has been drawn, and the process of collection of evidence will be intensified now. Nobody, it's not the CBI's position that the Prime Minister does not come under the purview of its investigation. Definitely, the CBI has got the power to summon the Prime Minister and ask for his comments on the whole episode. So, the absence of the Prime Minister's name at this stage does not seem very strange. They would like to collect more information on the procedure adopted. They would like to go through certain papers which are within the Prime Minister's office.
But Mr. Raghavan, doesn't this seem to you, sir, of different yardsticks? Of different yardsticks being applied? You know, the CBI believes that one of the foremost industrialists in this country, sir, the CBI believes one of the foremost industrialists in this country is accused of criminal conspiracy, criminal misconduct. There is an FIR against Kumar Mangalam Birla.
No, you understand.
But there is a different yardstick for this competent authority.
You understand this is a technical requirement.
Okay.
No, this is a technical requirement where the beneficiary was Mr. Kumar Mangalam or his company. Naturally, he has to figure, and it is the Secretary to Coal Department who was directly in touch with Kumar Mangalam, and the rest of the actors in the whole episode.
The Prime Minister was also in touch, sir. He was well aware of the case. He was the coal minister.
You may have been aware, but they would like to unearth some more meeting, some meeting of mind between the Prime Minister and the others in the so-called criminal conspiracy. I do not think you can fault the CBI for having named either the Coal Secretary or Mr. Kumar Mangalam as the principal conspirators. That's a technical requirement because Mr. Kumar Mangalam was a beneficiary.
Okay. Now, so I want to go across to Mr.
There is nothing to indicate that the Prime Minister...
Yes. Sir, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. I want to go across to Jai Panda now.
The Prime Minister...
Sir, Mr. Raghavan, I'll come back to you. Jai Panda, there is a letter that Naveen Patnaik wrote to the Prime Minister in 2005, where and you know, we've got the letter here as well. It's been released to the public. It's all in the public domain. The FIR is also in the public domain. Larger questions remain about why and how CBI FIRs remain in the public domain, but we won't go there right now. But that being said, this letter of the Prime Minister, or of the Chief Minister, strongly advocates Hindalco. It says, it talks about the industry that they are going to set up. It says, it is in this context that the allotment of a suitable coal block in favor of Hindalco becomes critical. The state government has assigned topmost priority to the allocation of the Talabira 2 coal block in favor of Hindalco. On the basis of this alone, it appears Mr. Naveen Patnaik is wrong if one goes by how the CBI seems to be conducting its investigations, or certainly going about and dispensing FIRs. Because it seems now that they are raising questions on him as well. Mr. Panda?
Let me point out two things here. The Orissa government has long had an official policy of value addition, and what that essentially means is that it distinguishes between those investors who want to come in and do mining of any kind, whether coal or any other mineral, and those investors who wish to do more than mining. They would like to invest downstream in putting up plants which provide jobs in Orissa, which provide revenues to the government of Orissa, and helps the state develop. And as a result of this, Orissa has repeatedly been in the news for attracting some of the largest investments in the last decade. And this letter that you referred to, the Chief Minister's letter, clearly points out to the Prime Minister what the official state policy is and in what terms Hindalco would fit into those policy requirements. But if you look at the last line of the letter, it very clearly asks the Prime Minister to examine the merits of Hindalco's application, because the allocation of coal mines is not within the powers of the state government, it is in the powers of the central government. And let me point out something, there is nothing clandestine about this. It is the Chief Minister writing an official letter to the Prime Minister pointing out the state policy and asking him to examine an application. If this is the basis on which the speculation is going on about CBI questioning, and let me tell you, so far it's speculation because there's no official information received yet, then I think it's most unfortunate.
Meera Sanyal, this brings me to you, because if you look at Naveen Patnaik's
Vishnu, may I
letter.
add something? Vishnu?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Vishnu, may I add something to this?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Patnaik did not enjoy any authority to award any coal mines.
He is not
He
award.
was merely a Chief Minister writing to the
Yes,
Government of India, and he was very, very competent, very correct in taking up the cause of an industry, pleading with the Government of India. While doing so, I do not think he committed any impropriety, because he was not the authority ultimately to sanction this coal mine. So I don't think you can fault Mr. Patnaik.
No, sir, I am not faulting him, because the report now is that the CBI has raised questions. This letter is within the purview of the CBI's investigations. If a Chief Minister of a state...
I do not think, my personal feeling...
Yes, sir.
My personal feeling is the CBI cannot fault Mr. Patnaik for writing to the Prime Minister recommending the case of Hindalco.
Sir, the court will decide ultimately who is at fault and who is not at fault. The larger issue over here...
If a Chief Minister cannot champion the cause of investment in his own state and then ask the central government to examine applications by investors, then what on earth are we talking about?
Let me ask that to Meera Sanyal, because Meera, let me just refer to the FIR which names Kumar Mangalam Birla and the Coal Secretary. The central basis for this, for action or this FIR to be taken against Mr. Parekh, is that Mr. Shri Parekh, by abusing his official position as a public servant, recommended the allocation of Talabira 2 along with two companies without any valid basis or change in circumstances, and with the sole intention to show undue favors to Hindalco Industries Limited. There is no mention of what he gained or what he collected in exchange. Was there money? Is there a suspicion of that? There is no mention of that. What sort of undue favor did he get? There was no mention of that as well. But this is a coal secretary, a man with an impeccable track record, who believes that, look, we have taken decisions, we need to take another decision, because it is in the interests of the country, of industrial development. And he finds his name over here. Naveen Patnaik, this letter is being looked at by the CBI because apparently he is favoring a company as well. So, is there any scope for industry to actually say, look, please favor us, we believe we have a good product, or we believe we can help industrial development?
So Vishnu, I think we're really dealing with a couple of issues here. The first is, I wish more politicians would go out and encourage industry. We're facing a situation where the country's growth rate has fallen dramatically, and every leader in the world goes out and canvasses for industry, whether it is Barack Obama or whether it is David Cameron. And here we are in the situation where people are trying to encourage industry and growth, and they're being trashed for it. The second point I want to make is, what is the root cause of this problem? The root cause is that we don't have a transparent and clear methodology for allocating natural resources in our country, whether this is spectrum or gas or coal. What we need is clear and simple laws so that the people of this country, the citizens, can be assured of competition and transparency and the best possible price. And the third thing I want to say is that in the case of coal particularly, this is a national tragedy. India has coal reserves which will last 200 years, and yet we are importing. Coal is now the third or fourth largest import in our canopy of things that we are importing. We're talking about a current account deficit which is falling drastically, and the rupee which is falling. We need to get industry up and going, we need to get the mining sector up and going, and we need to do so in a clear and transparent manner. The entire country is now paralyzed because fingers of suspicion are being pointed at everyone, whether you're an honest bureaucrat or you're an honest politician or you're an honest industrialist. So this finger pointing must stop, and we must have clear and simple rules where people can get on honestly with business.
Randeep Surjewala, I'll come to you next, but Meena Sanyal, one more question to you. Why would a foreign investor touch India right now? Is this a sentiment that you're hearing?
Well, you're absolutely right, Vishnu. They are not touching India at the moment. I mean, we have a political establishment which has, the habit of going back and raising retrospective amendments. The case of Vodafone is a case in point. Now you have all of this chaos with respect to anything which is done. Why would a foreign investor invest in India? More importantly, why would Indian industry invest in India? It's getting impossible to do business in India.
All right, Randeep Surjewala, go ahead. The larger issue of investment, why would anybody touch India?
Two quick points.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Two quick points I want to make, Som, carrying on from where Ms. Meera Sanyal just said.
Yes.
Number one, in this case, I do think that the debate that we are doing is a little prejudged. Here is a case where a first information report is lodged. Everybody, it's a Supreme Court monitored investigation and everybody would get a right to defend itself. But the second and the more important point is the genesis of the dispute, which we also discussed yesterday. And the genesis is complete transparency in allocation of coal blocks. We had a process since 1993. The NDA followed it. Before that, the two other union governments followed it, whereby coal blocks were allocated on first come, first serve. It's only for the first time in UPA 1 that Dr. Manmohan Singh proceeded to change the system, initiate the process of taking it to a transparent bidding and tariff related processes. Unfortunately, 5 state governments where the coal lies, including the government of Chhattisgarh, the then government of Rajasthan, where you have lignite, the government of Madhya Pradesh, the government of Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, they are on record to oppose the policy. Finally, the Mines and Minerals Act has been amended. What we are seeing today is those 57 blocks which have been subject matter of a debate on account of a CAG report on which Parliament committee has just given its report.
So the government has done nothing wrong. These questions which are being asked are all wrong. Randeep, Captain Abhimanyu has a point. He wants to counter you on that. Go ahead.
I'm happy that Mr. Randeep brought out this point. This is exactly what you call beating around the bush. The genesis of this entire scam lies in here, that when Mr. Parekh, who was then coal secretary, who recommended that we must go in for the competitive bidding instead of allotment process, and this entire note was prepared, it was accepted, But what took this government more than 36 months in finally making amendments in the MMRDA Act? So this was the time when the coal prices actually surged up in the international market, and the opening of the coal blocks.
Oh, you are asking a specific question on why there's a delay?
Created an environment.
This has been a long-standing point of the BJP. Randeep, answer that question.
Why would they allot it only to those who are related to the Congress party?
Yes, you have to give me a right to rebuttal.
Go ahead,
Classical BJP double speak. It's called calling the kettle black.
Don't deviate from the main issue, Randeep.
The main issue is that the Congress deliberately, he will not listen.
Deliberately did not
let him speak first so that at least he has
accepted the recommendations of Mr. Parekh at the time when they were made. All these amendments have, if they were made, then you could have gone in for competitive bidding, you could have gotten the right prices, and the entire scam could have been avoided. But this was deliberately made to give benefit to the Congress.
So this is classical BJP double speak. He will continue to speak because he does not want to listen. I have to come in and say when Dr. Manmohan Singh's UPA 1 government was changing the process to bidding. Who was opposing it? It was Vasundhara Raje Scindia who wrote a letter on 11th April 2005 opposing the bidding process. It was Chhattisgarh government of BJP who wrote a letter on 28th March 2005 opposing the process. It was the Jharkhand government then led by BJP government of Arjun Munda who opposed the process.
Okay, we are deflecting. We are deflecting from the larger issue over here. But I think let's just try and bring a little bit of sanity over here.
So the whole tragedy is that whenever you give me a right of rebuttal, the BJP spokesperson comes in and creates so much.
But Randeep, you made your point very effectively. But I think it's important for all of us over here to listen to a voice of
We have to take all stakeholders on board.
No, all stakeholders' points have been reflected. Okay,
yes,
but here is one more stakeholder. Randeep and Captain Abhimanyu, here is one more stakeholder whose voice must be heard. It is the voice of the chairman of the Godrej Group, Adi Godrej. I spoke to him earlier on in the day. I began by asking him how badly the CBI's move would hurt investor sentiment in India.
I think it's already created a very negative perception, and investor sentiment will clearly be affected. Already several earlier steps such as retrospective amendments, etc. affected investor sentiment. We need to get more investors into the country, and this move, to my mind, was definitely avoidable.
But sir, how about those who believe the CBI is doing its job? This is a Supreme Court monitored case, and therefore the CBI has a right to ask questions.
Of course they have a right to ask questions, but unnecessarily filing FIRs against highly respected business houses and business people is not the way the country should conduct its affairs.
Quick question, sir. The CBI alleges that there are very strong reasons why there may be charges against Mr. Birla. For example, the screening committee recommendation as far as Hindalco is concerned was overturned by the former coal secretary, and the block was given to Hindalco. Mr. Birla met the coal secretary, who's also been named in the FIR before the decision was taken. There are question marks on the process. This is what the CBI is saying, sir.
Yes, but what has that got to do with it? Surely a business person can meet the coal secretary, and surely there can be a discussion, and surely the coal secretary is a senior enough person to change recommendations, and that's what was allotted to Hindalco.
All right, Mr. Godrej, thank you so much for speaking to us. I'd like to thank all our other panelists for joining us, but we're going to quickly move on now to another one of our big stories this evening. Let's quickly move on to our second focus. Now, in 20 years, this is a man who's been transferred on 45 occasions. Now Ashok Khemka, an IAS officer in Haryana, the man who raised questions on the land deals of Robert Vadra, has been named in a second charge sheet by the Haryana government for apparently failing to meet sales targets when he was the managing director of the Haryana Seed Development Corporation. Incidentally, the department failed to meet its target 3 times in the last 5 years. But it seems only Mr. Khemka has ended up getting charge sheeted, none of his predecessors.
Is the witch hunt against the man who took on Robert Vadra still continuing? Ashok Khemka is the only IAS cadre officer to be charge sheeted by the Huda government during its 9-year tenure. He now has the distinction of getting charge sheeted twice, and this time over failing to meet the sales target as the managing director of the Haryana Seed Development Corporation Limited. Just a fortnight ago, citing administrative misconduct, the Haryana government had charge-sheeted Khemka for cancelling the mutation of the Vadra DLF land deal. But the government claims both these decisions are not prejudiced.
After examining the evidence given by the different departments, only then the case with the proper analysis has been submitted to the CM office with a definite proposal which has been agreed to by the CM office.
But did the government ignore the IAS officer's explanation? This letter that Khemka wrote to the State Agriculture Minister states that the State Seed Production Committee, headed by the Principal Secretary, approved production of old varieties of seeds. Out of the 3 lakh quintals, more than 2 lakh was sold. Out of these, 1,60,000 quintals was sold directly by the Haryana Seed Development Corporation Limited through its outlets, 30,000 quintals more than last year. Only the old varieties of wheat seeds which were not in demand in the market remained unsold. And it's the State Seed Production Committee's responsibility to approve or reject production of such varieties. Ashok Khemka has seen 44 transfers so far in his 22-year career, many times for upsetting the political class. But this time his supporters claim Khemka could be paying the price for exposing corruption in the department. In one of these cases, Khemka found misappropriation to the tune of 5 crore rupees. He wrote a letter to the DG CBI of Chandigarh to register a complaint against the officers of 2 national seed supplying agencies. Khemka claimed the officers had purchased seeds from private suppliers in 2010 at rates much above the prevailing market price. Within a month of making the CBI inquiry, the IS officer was transferred, this time to the Archives Department, an obvious demotion.
और जो विसिल ब्लोअर होते हैं, जो लोग आवाज बुलंद करते हैं भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ, उनको सम्मानित करने की जगह अपमानित करने का काम ये कांग्रेस की आदत सी बन गई.
The department has failed to meet its target thrice in 5 years, but Khemka is the only officer to be penalized for it. With Anand Patel, Madhusudan for NDTV.
Well, Randeep Surjewala and Captain Abhimanyu remain with us for this debate on whether there's a witch hunt against Ashok Khemka. Joining us also, Kiran Bedi. Thanks, ma'am, very much for being with us. Randeep, let me come to you first. Let's just look at the sequence of events in this particular charge sheet against Ashok Khemka. 4th of March, Khemka wrote to the DG CBI to register a criminal case against officers of 2 national seed supplying agencies. Right? On the 12th of March, 8 days later, the Agriculture Minister sends him a note asking him about the lower sale of seeds by the HSDC, the Haryana Seeds Development Corporation. On the 18th of March, he is summoned by the Principal Secretary Agriculture, who passes an order holding him responsible for low sales. On the 4th of April, he is essentially thrown out and sent to the Department of Archives and Archaeology. Either this is unprecedented efficiency by the Haryana government or this is a witch hunt. Which one is it, sir?
I think we just heard the Principal Secretary to Chief Minister clarifying the issue. However, 3 facts, now that you've given these dates, 3 facts you must kindly listen. Haryana Seeds Development Corporation supplies seeds to farmers.
Yes.
Also, this is the seeds, wheat seeds are its primary stay. In 2009-10, it sells 2,88,000 quintals of seed. Only 5 quintals is left out. On 2010-11, it sells 3,08,000 quintals of seed. Only 4,870 quintal is left out. In 2011-12, it sells 2,50,000 quintals of seed. 100% is sold out. Then Mr. Khemka takes over in 2012-13. It only manages to sell 1,89,000. It has a balance of 87,113 quintals of seed. It leads to a loss of 22 crores to the corporation. The corporation nearly goes bankrupt. What has the government done?
Okay.
The government has only decided to charge him for minor penalty in not being able to be effectively sell the seed to the farmer, as also in protecting the interest of the corporation.
I've got different numbers.
To the whole issue by saying that government is witch hunting is per se wrong.
Okay, I've got different numbers, but Kiran Bedi, is this timing coincidental? Because just a few days after he goes to the CBI and says there is corruption, he is asked by the minister, he is told by the minister he's failed in his job, and then this process begins, and in less than a month he is booted out and replaced by an undersecretary 5 ranks junior to him, who walks into his office with a letter and said, I'm here to relieve you.
It's absolutely hounding. It's a hounding of an honest officer who is professionally competent, who's got impeccable integrity, who's had the courage to touch the first family of this country. Did anybody do it before him? In fact, he's been the whistleblower. I have some documents from me where he has been actually alerting the government on what needs to be done and what good practices he followed and how he rescued the situation. On the contrary, he has a right to information today to know what did the government do on his complaints.
Yes.
He has been the whistleblower. He's been a whistleblower. He wrote in April, he wrote in March, he wrote in July. What has the government done on it? Instead of responding to his matters, if they come back and hound him, I think it's a, what kind of country are we living in? On one hand you want honest officers, on the other hand you hound of honest officers of the rare kind
the
like...
Department of Archives and Archaeology that...
Of the rare kind, you've had Durga Shakti, you've had Khemka. These are the people who've been... How do you expect these officers to perform at all? This is what they do. In fact, he has, at the moment his complaint has been taken cognizance of by the CBI, matters which the government had. You know what? That CBI complaint, if well investigated, will go right to the top. Will go right to the top because I have information on it.
Yes.
And that's what is being protected. So when it's going right to the top now, it's a matter of time. Do you know what? Good days will come. He's going through a tough time, but his good days will come when CBI
he's been going for a tough time for 20 years. He's been transferred 45 times.
But that's what you have to fight for justice. I think his CBI complaint will touch the...
Randeep Surjewala, you know, Kiran Bedi raises an important point because the allegation which has been made by Khemka is that there was a loss of 5 crores to the government because the National Cooperative Consumers Federation of India and the National Agriculture Cooperative Marketing Federation of India was misleading the HSDC, which he worked for as its boss, about the availability of certified wheat seeds. They actually got this from the market and sold it to the HSDC for a higher price. He says this was criminal. The government lost 5 crores. He wrote to the CBI. This is his allegation. He didn't inform anybody. He wrote to the CBI. Is this such a big mistake?
So, one, we are not conducting an inquiry against Mr. Khemka. We all respect all officers with due regards to Ms. Kiran Bedi, whom we all value and admire. I only want to say one thing to her, that does the government have a right to conduct an inquiry into an incident which has caused 22 crores of loss leading to a corporation going into financial mess or not? Does the government have a right to ask an officer, why did you not do your duty of selling these seeds and making them available to the farmers of Haryana? Does the government have a right or not to even issue a minor charge sheet against an officer whom in its opinion, and they may be wrong or right, that the inquiry will tell, ask whether the seed not sold, whether the sale meetings not taken, whether the corporation not governed amicably by him is not a dereliction of duty on his part.
It's not a question of government's rights. It's not a question of government's rights. It's not a question of government's rights. It's a government's responsibility. If someone is doing wrong.
One more line. We just heard a spokesperson of the BJP leveling allegations without realizing
I haven't spoken yet, sir. I haven't even spoken yet, sir.
During the government, their government 6 times.
Have I even spoken? Have I
go ahead, make your point, Captain.
It's very strange.
All right,
as this Haryana government has been functioning. I'm sorry, your conduct on this channel here is as bizarre as your government is functioning in case of Mr. Ashok Khemka, and not only Mr. Ashok Khemka. Mr. Randeep, it is not a question of right of the Haryana government. It's a question of responsibility of the state government. If there is a dereliction of duty on the part of any officer, the government is bound to act and must act. Then please tell me, that is it the only case in last 9 years of Congress government that only Mr. Ashok Khemka who's indulged in this dereliction of duty? Was it not the case in when Ambala you had Narega, almost 29 crore rupees were taken out in this thing, Narega and forest department? Was it not the case, Hansi Bhutana, you spent more than 500 crore rupees without obtaining sanction from the central government authorities? Was it not the case when you overspent by a few hundred crore rupees?
Randeep, I'll come to you in one second. Randeep, I'm coming to you next.
You were the power minister. You raised objections in that case.
People in the BJP, your government, the Punjab government, which is denying the right of the farmers of Western Haryana.
I did not interrupt.
I'm sorry to say that why are you supporting such a cause which denies
Gentlemen, one second, Captain, you made lots of points.
I would just like to say one more thing.
Okay, all right, Randeep, I will come to you next. Yes.
We all know that why Ashok Khemka is being hounded and, the witch hunt is taking place. We did not really talk about it, but yes, Mr. Ashok Khemka is one of the most honest officers and brightest officers in Haryana, and he is being hounded. This is bizarre. The government is almost
okay. All right, fine.
Like a despotic government.
Come in and make the point you were making. Go ahead.
So, that is why the Bharatiya Janata Party government in Haryana between 1999 and 2005 transferred Mr. Khemka 6 times.
We were not in the government. He knows it. He's telling lies.
Good, will Mr. Abhimanyu also tell on this national
either he doesn't know or he's telling lies. We were not in the government.
And I'm not here to attack Mr. Khemka or to level any allegation against him. We all respect all officers, including Mr. Khemka.
If you speak 1,000 times, it can't become a truth,
Here was an officer under whose leadership
let's not politicize this.
There was a 22 crore loss caused to the Seeds Corporation.
Go ahead, yeah.
And does the government not have a right to charge sheet him?
All right. Does the government not have a right to charge sheet any officer it was?
Yes, Vishnu. But why haven't they replied to Khemka's letters? Khemka's letters are actually identifying the unethical practices which he overcame, which he corrected, and the government has accepted them over the days. That's why I'm saying this is one-sided information which we are getting. We don't have somebody speaking up for Khemka here. We don't have Khemka's lawyer to counter all this information. All we know is I have in my possession letters which he's been writing. Doesn't he have a right to get replies to these letters? And number two, should he not have got a show cause notice, a preliminary inquiry before you looking on a charge sheet? This is a violation of natural justice.
Randeep Surjewala, that's an important point. Why was he not asked to speak?
Absolutely incorrect. I think Madam knows that for a minor penalty charge sheet, the inquiry itself is per se a preliminary inquiry. An officer under the All India Services can be served a minor penalty charge sheet. Madam, you have been in service for so long, we expect that from you. A minor penalty charge sheet does not require a preliminary inquiry under the rules or jurisprudence.
This is natural justice. You've been a law graduate, I've been a law graduate. Natural justice is his right. You've not replied to any one of his complaints. On the contrary, you trying to kill a whistleblower. He's been a corrector. You've been implementing. Your records will show. This information is all open in the community today. It's even available to me. The minutes have been drawn where his suggestions have been implemented. How will you justify? I'm telling you, it's a matter of months before he will have the last say. You will see that. You will get exposed because CBI will pin you down right to the top for whatever wrongs have been happening. You are demoralizing the bureaucracy.
Madam Justice,
don't do that.
I'm not saying Mr. Khemka is guilty.
You are a young politician.
Presuming that he is guilty.
Please understand, you are a young politician.
Justice should be done, madam.
Okay, let me speak. You are a young politician. This country's future is also yours. Let the bureaucracy function. You've been transferring Khemka like this. You have a rule of 2-year tenure. Why have you been violating it by lock, stock and barrel? Why haven't you been implementing it? That's my question.
All right, fine. Randeep, go ahead. Reply to that.
Madam, I also want to remind you, when he was transferred from his post of Director Consolidation, there was a bailable warrant issued against Shri Ashok Khemka by a division bench of the High Court for not exercising his power under the Haryana Land Sealing Act, because he felt that the appeal went to an officer who may be subordinate to him. The High Court issued a bailable warrant against him finally a direction came. He was transferred and appointed as MD of the Seeds Development Corporation. He wrote he is too senior for the post and the post is junior. He, without realizing that people who were 10 years senior to him have been his predecessors.
But then why is it that the person who replaced him is 5 ranks junior to him?
To function. Can I say one thing, Som? There are some things which should be left to the discretion of government.
Look.
Why was he succeeded? Can officers before him can also ask. He was preceded by officers who were, and I was checking, one was 84 batch, one was 85 batch.
I think we are getting into,
also say, why was he
all right, we are getting into minutiae over here, and I think the larger issue remains on what happens next. Is the government valid in trying to question and take action against an officer who they believe has done wrong, or will Khemka continue to fight, or will he be essentially a figure in the Department of Archives which he works for?
Let me tell you, Som. Let me tell you. We'll discuss this again. No, I'm telling you something.
You join me tomorrow at 9 p.m. We'll discuss this again.
No, but
I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. I'm going to quickly move on to a story that concerns all of us. But before that, a short break. Well, it almost seems that there isn't a day that goes by without there being reports of ceasefire violations on the line of control. The last 48 hours are a case in point. There have been 7 ceasefire violations. 7 ceasefire violations in 48 hours. 2 civilians injured. The exchange of fire on the line of control between India and Pakistan continues unabated. On Thursday, the ceasefire violation took place in the Arispura sector. But since August, the violations have taken place across the LOC, starting with Kargil and going down right up to Arispura in the Jammu division. A new intelligence assessment, meanwhile, says more ceasefire violations and increased infiltration attempts are likely in the next few months. The assessment is based on the fact that there are over 700 well-trained and well-armed terrorists waiting at various launch pads on the Pakistani side. The increased frequency of firing on Indian posts along the line of control is to provide cover fire to these terrorists. Since January, there have been 192 ceasefire violations, including 2 on Thursday. This is a substantial rise compared to the figures of 2011 and 2012. Of the 190 plus ceasefire violations till date this year, more than 130 have taken place since August alone. Most of the terrorist camps are located at Sonar, Sardar, Kale, the Neelam Valley and Lipa Valley opposite the Kashmir Valley, and at Forward Kahuta, Hot Spring and Nikial close to the Jammu division. About 450 terrorists meanwhile are present in the hinterland. Most of them belong to the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Hizbul Mujahideen. They are likely to try and create trouble in the state even during the winter months, the assessment concludes. Well, we are completely out of time on the buck stops here. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Do join us as we bring you the day's big stories and big debates.